All right, welcome to football today. Doing a quick mini episode because of the Stefon Diggs trade. You usually don't get anything like that this early into draft month. No Rose, he's out being a father, like a bad person with his son, visiting colleges. It's just me and Justin. So let's just dive into it, Justin. The Bills traded away Stefon Diggs, a 5th-round pick and a 6th-round pick, for a 2025 second-round pick from the Texans that was originally owned by the Vikings. This is shocking in a sense, Justin, because the Bills had kind of put up with Stefon Diggs for a while, and then none of this happened, during the free agency period where these types of moves happen, and then Stefon Diggs does his, scheduled annoying tweeting, and the next day he's out of there.
Yeah, you can't help but feel like something had to happen, right? You can't, or else I think this would have gotten done a couple weeks ago when it kind of made more sense for it. But man, the more time goes on, I'm not like, obviously this is a win for the Houston Texans, but as more time goes on, I'm not feeling like this is such a loss and it's so brutal for Buffalo. When this first initially came out, I'm like, all right, well, what is the Bills' plan? And I'm still kind of wondering that, but it just seems like there's a lot of tea leaves that this kind of situation was coming to a head for a really long time with Stefon Diggs and Buffalo, where it kind of just felt like this is how this was going to end up sooner rather than later.
Oh, and it absolutely felt like that, right? One, he didn't report on time last year, that whole big deal. Like he had always been. The Bills had done a really good job of keeping how annoying he was behind the scenes to deal with, right? And I think it just gets exhausting, right? You have to deal with someone like that, and now you're going to do it for 4 years. It's just exhausting to deal with that and have to work around trying your best to make sure you're not bothering him or not making him an issue. And then you saw when Joe Brady took over that he had a reduced role, and it was more of a spread it around type of offense.
Really reduced role.
Which was probably better for them in the long run. I think that made it a little more expendable. But the only reason that we didn't think this was happening is because Stefon Diggs has the $31 million cap hit this year, and the Bills still have like this. The Bills don't save any cap space from this move. So that was the only, like, if they would have saved $10 million in cap space, this would have been a move people have been talking about for a long time. But it was just, well, the Bills aren't saving any cap space from it, and he's older, so what are you going to get back? That we didn't think was going to happen. So I think it had to be pretty toxic behind the scenes with him. Because it's not a great return for the Bills, right? It's a second-round pick next year, and you even have to give away your 5th and 6th this year. So I think the Bills were just tired of it because they don't save any cap space this year, and they were going to move off of him after this year because the contract freed up. And they were just tired of it and decided let's get something back before we get nothing back, which would have happened last year.
Yeah, and they did get something back. I think that's the important thing here, where you could look at Stefon Diggs in his last 4 to 5 games of the year and see how his yards per game goes severely down, especially with the inclusion of Joe Brady, and you can look at that as
I have the splits of it, right?
Yeah, give me the splits. We'll talk
10
about 10
games before Joe Brady took over. He was on pace for like his best season of his career. 10 games, 73 catches, 868 yards, 7 touchdowns on a 71% catch rate.
I'll interrupt you here. What was one of the things Dalton Feely and I were saying this on our power ranking show, and I'm sure you guys were saying this on Football Today. It almost felt like, even though he was having these great numbers and he was getting the ball a lot, it almost felt like the Bills' offense was really force-feeding him, and that was kind of to their detriment, right?
Yeah, they absolutely were force-feeding him. I think it came to the biggest head versus the Giants, where Josh Allen wasn't just force-feeding Stefon Diggs, but he was actively passing up like wide-open guys to throw the ball to Stefon Diggs. So he lost 2 targets per game when Joe Brady took over, and so in 9 games compared to 10, he had 44 catches, so 29 less catches, 388 yards, so almost 500 yards less and only 1 less game, 1 touchdown on a 58.6% rate. Now, I don't think that is up. Stefon Diggs is on the decline, right? to me, this isn't a Julio Jones trade where a lot of people were praising that Julio Jones trade. It's like Julio is kind of done. Like I don't see this from the Titans' point of view. From the Texans, like I think they're still getting a really good player with Stefon Diggs.
Yeah.
And you don't have any big money tied up into him where it's going to hurt you down the line. But this Joe Brady offense with the Bills, like out of all the people that the Bills have lost this year, this is the best player that they've lost, right? They lost Tre'Davious White, the safeties, their offensive lineman Mitch Morse, and Ryan Bates. They lose Gabe Davis. But to me, this is the one that doesn't signal up the Josh Allen contract because again, they're not saving any money.
Right.
They're not saving any cap space. They are saving some cash from not doing this. But I think this offense is going to be fine. Right? Now, do they still need to add wide receiver? Yeah, I think they're going to look for that in the draft. I don't know if they're going to be able to get one round one, but I think they might have their eyes on a guy like Javon Baker who can come in and fill that X receiver role. But this is an offense that's going to want to spread it around. You saw it with Joe Brady in those 9 games. You saw it with Joe Brady in Carolina. And you saw it even with, Joe Brady at LSU, right? Even though they had all those alphas on that team, they spread the ball around really well with that Joe Burrow LSU team. And they added Curtis Samuel, who had his best, he's been like a, 60 catches, 700-yard type guy. Despite his best year was with Joe Brady, though, in Carolina, where he had over 1,000 scrimmage yards that season, and I think eight total touchdowns. So I think they're going to look to run the ball a little more, James Cook. And, hey, do they need to improve at wide receiver? Absolutely. A group of Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir as your best 2 wide receivers is not a good group at all. But I don't think this is, like, any panic for Buffalo either.
No, not at all. And the biggest thing here is that Stefon Diggs isn't on your team, right? I think that's the biggest thing. We've seen an offense that Josh Allen has basically carried offenses these last couple years, right? So that's what I've gotten a lot of my replies because my first reaction was, well, what is the Bills' plan here? Like, what is their outlook? Like, or are we in? You not only did you trade Stefon Diggs away, you also traded him away to a fellow AFC team that is competing that you very well could play in the postseason. So clearly they don't care about any of that. So I was thinking, well, what is their plan? And I got a lot of replies saying, well, Josh Allen has carried the offense, and Josh Allen has always, carried blah, blah, blah. That was still with Stefon Diggs on the team.
Yeah, they're worse today than they were yesterday.
Yeah, and even though, through the last however many games of the season, to finish the year, it was some 40 yards per game. You still had Stefon Diggs on the team, and you have to prepare every single week to face Stefon Diggs and put a corner and shade a safety to his side. That's the stuff that you're doing, and you're not doing that anymore. So,
and he was their only just go get open type of guy too, right?
Yeah.
Which as much as you want to spread the like, it's good to have a go get open type of guy and have that trust where hey, they're sending pressure. I'm gonna throw the alert to Stefon Diggs because I know that guy's gonna go. So they are worse today than they were yesterday. I just think the sticking point for Buffalo on like if you ask them why'd you do this, they would say because we wanted to get something for him this year where we would have got nothing for him next year.
And wide receiver returns haven't been that great, right? In trades.
If he was 4 years younger, he would have gotten a first round pick. Like DJ Moore was essentially a first round pick. Tyreek Hill was the big one with the 2 first round picks. I mean, you look at the guys, the wide receiver ones who are traded before they hit the 30-year-old mark or the 27-20. It's usually been a first round pick.
Yeah.
Like if T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk were available right now, they would be traded for first round picks. But Diggs is 31 years old. But it was just I feel like it was getting bad. You had the 2 big drops in the Chiefs game. Him and Josh Allen were starting to get into it a good bit, and then Josh Allen's got to go and play Mr. Nice. And when Diggs shows up late to camp and McDermott takes a shot, and I think he became insufferable because again, they're not saving anything. Any type of money this year. They're making themselves a worse team without him, and they were just this has gotten too far, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better another year of trying to make this work with this guy.
Yeah. I want to ask you about Joe Brady's offense here, and I don't necessarily expect you to have a full response to this because I don't know how often you're watching it and you're breaking it down, but maybe this is something to keep an eye on as the season gets close. And this is from Scott Barrett, big time fantasy guy, and I've been following him for a couple years now, so I respect him. I asked a big name NFL insider about Joe Brady when the Bills first promoted him to OC. He told me he's not very well respected around the league because he doesn't know how to scheme guys open. And he mentions in 2020 how DJ Moore finished as Carolina's wide receiver 3 behind Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel in PPR. And then he brings up the 2023 pre-Brady and post-Brady Stefon Diggs splits with yards per game. So, he's saying that that's your glimmer of hope that Diggs might not be fully cooked as those numbers suggest. So that's something I also want to keep an eye on too. Well, I like Joe Brady. I think, you saw how much better the offense was. You saw that the Bills became one of the hottest teams in the NFL, one of the hottest offenses in the NFL when he became OC. But I'm interested to hear that from Scott Barrett, especially since he's, willing to tweet that out. All right, before we keep going and talking about Stefon Diggs to the Houston Texans, it's officially time for fans to head to the ballpark and root for their home team as the baseball season gets underway. Get in on the action early this season with our partners at the DraftKings Sportsbook right now. All new customers who bet $5 can get $150 in bonus bets instantly. And don't forget, use our code Football Today, all one word. Stay in on the action. Use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. I love me some parlays and combine multiple bets together from the same game, including total points scored, number of runs by your favorite player, and even more. And if sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. So, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use promo code Football Today, all one word. Bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code Football Today, only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours, and you'll be glad you did.
I mean, the decline in Stefon Diggs' numbers, I don't view that as, Stefon Diggs didn't fall off from having a career best season halfway through the year and just you know what, he's old now. It's like, it does, guys fall off, but it doesn't happen
right
at a finger snap in the middle of the season when a guy's having a career year. It very much has to do with the Joe Brady offense, but they started getting Khalil Shakir open. But what I think they're going to try and do, because they lost Gabe Davis too, is they're going to just truly try and spread this ball around. I think Curtis Samuel was one of the most under-talked about moves in free agency. It's he's going to have a real plan for him. He's going to be a big piece for Buffalo, and that was with Stefon Diggs. I thought Dalton Kincaid was going to have a year two, really breakout year. I thought he was pretty good last year, and then I just think year 2 was going to do him wonders. He's obviously a big piece of that. And then obviously James Cook. I think if there's anyone who benefited from Joe Brady the most, it was James Cook. So he's going to get more. So they're truly just going to try and be a spread it around type of offense. Will they look to try and get a wide receiver 1? Absolutely, but I don't think they're going to be desperate either. I see people saying they should trade up into the top 10.
No,
I don't think they're taking big swings like that. But I do think there's a good crop of day 2 guys that I would be surprised if they didn't come out of this draft with one of those. If they don't do it with the 28th pick, I believe they have.
I'm looking up the 2024 Bills draft picks that they have now.
They've got a lot of picks. Well, they traded for a 5th and a 6th.
They have round 1. They have round 2. They have 2 4th rounders, and they traded away a 5th and a 6th.
Yeah,
but they have 2 more 5th round picks from the Packers, and then they have their own 5th round pick. So they have 3 5th round picks before the trade. They traded one of them away, and then they have 2 6th round picks. So they had a plethora of 5th and 6th round picks. They're just choosing whatever those picks from the Bears, Packers, and then Cowboys through the Texans that they had at the 6th round pick through. So they still have their picks day 3. They have a lot of picks. It's round 3 that they're missing, and then they're getting a 2nd rounder next year. So they're not leveraging what they can do on day 3. That plan is still in place for them. Here's what I want to ask you: do you think this is signifying and signaling that Brandon Beane, but especially Sean McDermott, are safer? That, they gave the green light to make this trade, to trade away a superstar, a guy that Josh Allen has depended on. Do you think this is kind of all right, we're going to enter a little bit of a phase where maybe we have to rebuild and build through the draft with the wide receiver room, Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, you're safe to do this and you have security.
I mean, I don't
Or
know
not.
how much those guys were on the hot. Like, I don't have we heard any reports out of Buffalo of their owner, I don't think this changes much. Like, I think they viewed this as like we're gonna do this all again, and it's gonna be worse this year with the not showing up to training camp on time and all that goes with that. And they had been doing their best to keep a wraps on it as best they could, and they're just like, we can't do this for another year. Let's move off of this while we can. I really think it's as simple as that. I think they thought Stefon Diggs was going to be toxic. Joe Brady, like you said, maybe that's a detriment to them, where like Joe Brady wasn't going to have him be a 1,400-yard receiver. He was going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. Like maybe that's part of it too. Is like, hey, this is a recipe for disaster because we're not just going to force feed this guy the ball. We're not going to throw him little bubble screens just so he can get his catches and targets up.
Yeah.
But I do think the Bills, hey, am I saying they're going to win the Super Bowl? No, but I think they're going to, to me, they'll have a top 5 offense in the NFL. I think there's more questions on the defense.
Really?
Than on the offense. But I think the Bills offense will be fine. They'll look to improve. They lost Mitch Morse and Ryan Bates, so those are offensive lines got to get figured out. But I think they're going to be able to sustain themselves. For the Texans' point of view on this, Justin.
Yep.
I mean, for them, we talk about how it's not a good return for Buffalo. This is a great move for the Houston Texans, right? Like they don't have to change anything with their cap situation. Now you have a wide receiver trio of Stefon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. You don't have to rush Tank Dell back from the injury or put more pressure on him. So now you have 2 1,000-yard receivers plus a guy in Tank Dell who was on pace for it. A stud two-way tight end in Dalton Schultz, one of my favorite players in the league. You're going to get a bunch of light boxes to run the ball.
Yeah.
Like it's a simple concept, even though people try to explain it like it's in depth. They're taking advantage of the C.J. Stroud rookie contract, and it's the right decision for them. Like that's going to be a nice trio. Diggs will be on his best behavior this year, and then after this year, they could cut him at any point without having to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a huge test of D'Amico Ryans and even just as a head coach because Diggs probably will be on his best behavior year one, especially if he's going to.
That's how it always goes, unless your name's Antonio Brown.
Right. But I think it's still going to be a big test because, Bobby, we know Stefon Diggs wants the ball, wants his targets, et cetera, et cetera. He's gotten at least 154 targets since he was a Buffalo Bill. And then 166, 164, 154, 160. Those are his 4 years respectively. Even last year, Bobby still got 160 targets and 107 catches. He's not getting 160 targets in this Houston Texans offense. They do like to run the ball a little bit on early downs, way more than they did with Josh Allen there and company. But that's not the reason. It's that there's more mouths to feed. There's Nico Collins, there's Tank Dell, there's tight ends, there's running backs, and things like that. There's just going to be way more mouths to feed in Houston. So this is why I like it. I like it from the standpoint of, let's say Stefon Diggs has taken a little bit of a step back, or he's going to take a step back because he is getting a little bit older. Blah 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 blah. Maybe the splits mean something. He doesn't need to be the 160 target guy in the Houston Texans. Do I think he still can get 100 catches and maybe get close to it? Yeah, but I don't know if he's going to be getting. That's a lot of targets, and I don't know if he's going to be getting that many. I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that he will not be getting that many targets as a member of the Houston Texans, so they don't need him to be the superstar wide receiver that's carrying the Buffalo Bills offense along with Josh Allen. They don't need Stefon Diggs to be that in this Houston Texans offense. That's why I kind of love it.
He is their best receiver, though, even though he's not going to get all those targets. So he will get their most targets on the team if everyone stays healthy. So yeah, I mean, this is there's really not a ton to break down from this for the Texans, right? Like you signed Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry, Aziz Al-Shaair, on the defensive side. Offensive line needs to be addressed, even though they were able to get through that season with all those guys banged up, and you already have a cornerstone in Laremy Tunsil, the highest paid offensive tackle in football. Like this, or on at least on an average annual basis, they are setting themselves up to be a Super Bowl contender this year, right? And you always have a hard time. Like we did the Texans the other day on this show, and it's like a hard time putting the second year quarterback on, that's gonna have to beat Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and all these guys. It's hard to say that team's a Super Bowl contender, but I mean, this is a really good roster, at least starter wise. There's depth questions, and we still have the NFL draft to get to, and they didn't lose any picks. They gained 2 picks on top of it.
Yeah, man. The thing that I love the most is that they just don't have to touch money. They don't have to push back. They don't have to reach and find it. I think I don't exactly the over the cap and those sites haven't fully updated yet, but Laramie Tunsil's the only player with over a $20 million cap hit on their team. The next is Donnell Hunter at $13.7 million this year. And then what? Diggs's contract is going to be $18 million. They're taking on $18 million of it. I think that's how
much they're paying. I don't know how much the cap hit is for them. Might be $19 million. I don't know exactly how that works. But here's the thing: like you said, they don't have to move in around any money.
That's awesome.
Here's the biggest thing, though. How much dead cap do you think he has next year?
Well, isn't it zero?
Zero.
Yeah.
He's under contract for for this year and then the 3 years after that, but they can cut him at any time. So this is not going to if and when the Texans need to save some money, Diggs' contract is not going to be a pain in the ass for them. It's as soon as Stefon Diggs shows decline in his play as he gets older, okay, now we just move on, and we gave up a most likely a late second round pick in that, right after we've made used all these picks to get CJ Stroud, trade up for Will Anderson. They are the team that traded back with the Vikings, and that second round pick from the Vikings next year is the one that they're getting, and then they get to keep the one from this year. So they've put themselves in a good spot with draft capital. They've used their draft capital pretty damn well. I'm really excited to see my guy Kenyon Green this year. He missed all last year, had a bad rookie season. That could be a surprise addition to that offensive line, even though it wasn't looking really good in preseason before he got hurt.
Yeah.
So the Texans are let's go through the AFC right now. You have the Kansas City Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champion. It's hard to beat them, but I think the Texans can. You have the Baltimore Ravens. They were tied at halftime of that playoff game, and then they went off. So, and then the Buffalo Bills. I really would love to see Stefon Diggs have to go play in Buffalo. That crowd would really give it to him.
Yeah, kind of feels like that's going to happen. It got very, very
they play
interesting
each other this year, but it's in Houston.
Very interesting strategic move by the Buffalo Bills. They didn't just trade Stefon Diggs to the Las Vegas Raiders. They traded, or even an NFC team. They traded him to a very much up and coming team in the AFC that the Bills will probably have to play at some point in a big game, if not a playoff game. So yeah.
And it's very wild to see how the Texans went from the most unwatchable team in football in 2022, and then having that wild last game of the year where they lost the first overall pick on a Jordan Akins touchdown, and Lovie Smith was grinning as he's getting ready to coach his last game in the NFL.
Thank you, Lovie Smith.
Walking off the field as he coached his last game in the NFL, and then they get CJ Stroud, second overall. Then go trade up for a guy like Will Anderson, who's really good for them. Have a really good year. Like Nico Collins, who was a talent waiting for some type of good quarterback play, right? If you looked at all the advanced stuff, man, this guy can play. Just had horrible QB play. He has it here. You get Tank Dell. That was a huge pick, a guy we really like coming out of the Senior Bowl. And you hit on some of those picks. You get good coaching to coach a very undisciplined defense the year before in D'Amico Ryans. And then in this offseason, you add Donnell Hunter, Danico Autry, Azeez Al-Shaair, and then you go and get Stefon Diggs to have an awesome wide receiver trio. So good move for the Texans. Bills, you'll be all right. Super Bowl is the standard, but yeah, you were already gonna have to get better to do that.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, I just came across some next gen stuff where I'm willing to bet maybe this is something that the Texans considered. What they did with the Stefon Diggs move is they made a strength even more of a strength, where Stefon Diggs is one of the best wide receivers against zone coverage, where he had plus 25.5 receptions over expected since 2020. And now he's joining CJ Stroud, which he's looking to improve his league high plus 62.6 passing EPA against zone in 2023. Stefon Diggs really good against zone, and now joining CJ Stroud, who was the league's best passer against zone coverage last year. And then also Stefon Diggs, 1,772 yards, receiving yards on vertical routes during his Bills tenure. That was the 5th most in the NFL over that span. And now Nico Collins had plus 169 receiving yards over expected on vertical routes, the 5th most in the NFL last year. So, I mean, just making a strength even more of a strength. Nico Collins is really good at something. Stefon Diggs is really good at that too. CJ Stroud's really good at something. Well, guess what? Stefon Diggs excels and is one of the best in the NFL in that category too. So, when Next Gen Stats really puts it like that, that's how you can see the fit making sense, and that's awesome for them.
Yeah, CJ Stroud, the pressure's on. Rookie season's over. Awesome fun. Hell of a job. Now it becomes like pressure time for the Texans to get it done in these next 3 to 4 years. So
now it becomes expected.
Yeah, I'm excited for Houston. I mean, with a move like this, to me they're easy favorite in the AFC South. I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to be a huge question mark if he can stay healthy for a full season, and what will he look like once teams start catching up to the things that Shane Steichen's doing to develop him. And then Jacksonville, as much as I love Trevor Lawrence, they're just a mess of an organization. And they lost Calvin Ridley. They are a team that is a team that to me is a mess that's probably being held together a little bit by Trevor Lawrence. So, all right, we appreciate you guys. We will be back whenever we're back. Maybe we'll still do a show for Friday. We'll talk to Christopher Rose about that. So we'll see you then. Thank you, Mike, for producing. Until then. See you next time.